Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, a show that will help you transform your marketing from mere messaging to programs that break the rules and make a difference. Join the movement today and learn non-traditional techniques that give you an edge. Now, here's your Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
If you've ever been in the market for business software, chances are you've done some comparison shopping, where you go onto a website and you search Google and you seek out alternatives. Let's say you're looking for QuickBooks or something and you say, well, what's an alternative to QuickBooks? And what happens while you're doing this search is that you come across these review sites, and there are a lot of them, and on these pages you'll find a roundup of competitors with ratings and reviews and a strong encouragement to click for more information to one or more of the software listed on the page. And what you may not know is that these review sites are lead generation machines, and they're huge businesses in and of themselves. So one of the global leaders in this arena is Capterra. And in today's episode, we're going to take a deep dive into the critical role review sites play in driving prospect interest and how marketers can affect the reviews themselves as well as generate and manage leads from these sites. So how do we do that? Well, let's talk to Claire Alexander, who is the Group Vice President and GM at Capterra. Claire, by the way, welcome to the show, Claire. I've noticed you have an amazing background with an AB from Harvard, an MBA from Stanford, 3 years as a Bain consultant, 7 years at Discovery, and maybe 6+ years at various software companies in a lot of different roles. You were like a product person, you were a marketer. I was just curious, how did you end up at Capterra?
Luck is how I ended up at Capterra. I was with Oracle, who had just acquired the startup that I had been with in Virginia, and was traveling a lot to the headquarters of the business unit that I was in, which is based in Denver. And I have a young son and didn't want to be on the road that much. And this opportunity presented itself. And I thought, well, sure, it involves less travel. I'll take a look. And it turned out to be a fantastic match from a cultural fit perspective, and then from a business opportunity and ability to potentially, have a huge impact for the folks that we serve through Capterra, which is the entire universe of small businesses out there. It was really exciting to me.
So one of the things, I did watch the video that you did about being at Capterra when you just sort of took the job, and you talked about two things that struck me. One was culture and the fact that you sort of responded to that in an overwhelming way. And the other was this notion of if the advice that you'd give to your 15-year-old self, which, by the way, I love that as a question. And but you talked about outcomes, focusing on outcomes was something a 15-year-old do, but now as a grown-up, you focus on process. Is that can we tie culture and process together?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a great question. So the thing that I did when I first heard about this role was go to not there at the time, to Capterra's kind of about us and team pages and careers pages, because I wanted to get a sense for culture. And there are 4 principles that really are the hallmark of our internal employee culture and what we try and offer into the market. And they are: seek the good, do great work, keep on getting better, and be ridiculously helpful. And those 4 values really resonate with me personally. And I thought, wow, if that's anywhere close to remotely true, this is an organization I could be very interested in working with. And I absolutely did find them to be true in terms of how we try and operate internally. And I think the exciting journey that we're on is how to make those values more manifest in our buyer experience on Capterra.com, and then also in how we serve our vendor community who's equally interested in reaching those buyers.
So cool. I love hearing stories about companies that not only have values that they share, but they actually live by them. One of the things that's interesting to me, and a lot of the folks that listen to the show, they're either VP of marketings or CMOs, and a lot of them sort of wonder how you can make the leap from marketing into a general management role like you have at Capterra. Did you, what were the experiences that you had along the way that were sort of set you up to sort of make the leap to GM from being more than the marketer?
Yeah, well, first of all, I never like the phrase more than the marketer because that kind of puts marketing at a disadvantage. But in my mind, the discipline of marketing is all about connecting the product, the market opportunity, and the individual consumer. And so if you are thinking about those three things and how to optimize them and provide feedback to products and look for growth opportunities that can help drive, revenue and bottom line, then as a marketer, you kind of are a general manager. So I would personally consider myself an accidental marketer. I kind of came into the discipline after having been in, as a consultant and in corporate development and FP&A roles and operations roles. And I love it because it is that synthesis of the market opportunity, the product, and the customer, and how to align them in the most powerful way possible.
First of all, so shamed, as you said, just a marketer. No, we believe very importantly that marketing is it. But what's interesting to me is that in large corporations in particular, you rarely see the CMO become the CEO. It just doesn't happen that often for the same reason. And it's not for the same reason, but you also don't see that many CMOs on board of directors. It's just one of those things. And part of it is this, there's this notion that marketing is sort of airy-fairy and a little bit of wizardry, whereas some of the other roles and responsibilities are more disciplined. And so it's a perception, I think, that sometimes marketers have a tough time overcoming.
Yeah, I mean,
to get into the C-suite.
It's very understandable, but of course, if you're in marketing today, especially with digital marketing, you can't just be one-sided in kind of the brain that you use. You have to be both a left and right brain person to be successful. And quite frankly, if we weren't extremely disciplined about trying to optimize our organic footprint, all the technical SEO work that goes into that, in trying to engage customers while they're in their buying journey, and perhaps even before they realize they need software, to get them into that top of the funnel kind of awareness phase, and knowing Capterra as a resource to help them with that. All of that is numbers. It's numbers and optimization and continuous learning patterns. And so I'm very optimistic, actually, that, again, as a discipline, marketing will become a much more normal and viable route for people to move into those, kind of executive roles. And I think that especially as marketing has more and more ability to have analytics attached to it, which has really just come up in the past 10 years, it's inevitable that will be true.
I agree with you, and I think it's really interesting. Earlier in an earlier episode, had a recruiter who was focused from Aegon Zender, who was focused on finding CMOs for large organizations, and sort of the perfect individual was described as someone who had 5 years on a major building brand, and 5 years doing hardcore demand generation, and so that they had both the data side and the brand side, and knew how to sort of work both of those areas. So completely agree. I think that the discipline of marketing is in fact getting more disciplined. Now, here's a question. Before we get into review sites themselves, as the general manager of Capterra, what are your biggest challenges? You can talk about it as business challenges or as marketing challenges.
They're really business challenges, but it's very related to marketing because marketing is so important to our overall kind of success. It's finding the right talent and putting them into the right roles, and making sure that they have access to kind of continual learning opportunities, so that they can stay state of the art. We were bootstrapped and then bought by Gartner 3 years ago, and I actually came in to take over from the founder of the company, who, as I said, has built this marvelous organization. But have been growing so quickly that finding enough talent that fits our culture and has the experience of scaling a brand is tough. And so that's definitely the thing that I'm thinking about most these days.
Spoken like a GM, it's just amazing because the first thing is get the right people on the bus, right, and the right seats on the right bus, and then give them the vision to where to go, and then provide the resource allocation. Is there from a marketing standpoint, are there some things that if you could wave a magic wand right now, what would you, other than having the right people in the seats, what would you like to see happen for Capterra?
Well, that is an easy question to answer. So we, like many businesses, are very, very dependent on Google. Google could decide to enter into our category as they have, for example, in travel, and just kind of crush us overnight. And so the biggest challenge is in fact a marketing one, is moving from this very performance-driven sort of product play to a more brand-driven direct traffic play where we're not, where our livelihood isn't completely dependent on Google, and where we have, developed relationships with buyers so that they think to come to us. Much like in travel, if you're searching to do travel, you just kind of know about TripAdvisor. And so whether you go there directly or you Google and then see something from TripAdvisor and say, oh yeah, that'll be useful, you go. That's the same type of journey that we're on at Capterra, and it's a really fun one, but it's complex to execute.
It is, and it's so interesting because, again, I'm going to go back to an earlier episode. Recently, we had Janine Pelosi of Zoom on, and you would have thought, well, Zoom, it's like we're using that to record this podcast, that they could just build their business online and that would be enough. But, they have found they needed to do outdoor to dramatically increase awareness of the product, and then use online as the way of sort of capturing business as opposed to both developing and capturing. So it's interesting that you say that. And I don't know if we're going to see outdoor in your future, but certainly it sounds like there'll be more than just sort of digital demand gen because otherwise you're too dependent on Google, right?
Yeah, no, interesting. Absolutely. And hats off to Zoom, by the way. I saw their takeover both in Newark and in San Francisco airports recently and thought, wow, I love that product. And they're doing a great job of raising awareness for it. So I actually took a picture of one of the banners and sent it to my team and said, guys, we need to be doing something like this.
Well, cool. Well, and you can have them listen to Renegade Thinkers Unite episode. I don't know it off the top of my head, but we'll link to it on the show, in the show notes. But and one of the things that it's funny, and I'll tell the folks who listen to the show, is often as a result of having guests on the show, I've connected guests. It's just it's a wonderful network. It turns out this little micro network of renegade thinkers. So that's cool to know. And one we can circle back to. I think what I sort of is, as we sort of wrap up this segment, I wanted to, you talked about this notion of outcome versus process. And I want to come back to that because I think it's such an interesting insight, particularly for a general manager, where the thought is with so many leaders that it's a cut and dry. We've got to grow the business by 10%. And so let's focus, let's start there and work our way backwards. And this notion of focusing on process is no. That's really about how we get, if we build this sequence right, we'll get to our destination. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing me back to that. I realized I didn't even, start to answer that question the last time you asked me. So let me give it another call. So that's exactly right. This whole notion of just get to an answer. The way you get to an answer is through a process, and if you can be really clear and deliberate about your process, then you have a hope of optimizing each step of it. And through that, the outcome comes. And so actually Gene Hall, who's the CEO at Gartner, has this great phrase that really, speaks to me, which speaks about this, which is, do the right things and the right results will follow. And I think that, one way that can show up, for example, is I remember back at Discovery, for example, I was running social media for a while, and we were just kind of putting stuff out there because it was this new platform and, people were talking about it. And going in and thinking about, okay, well, what are we actually trying to accomplish here? And setting up sort of a strategy of, okay, well, we want to connect on a one-to-one basis with our fans. And we know that the Mythbusters fans, for example, are very passionate fans and that they want to talk to each other. Why don't we have them talk to each other in a way that can amplify, the opportunity for other people to know about the show? And so, and why don't we highlight people who are really passionate fans and kind of give them a stage to stand on and a spotlight to stand under from the kind of discovery power, so that they can become, locally famous within the Mythbusters community and within kind of their own friend and larger networks. And this strategy of, not just using a channel for the channel's sake, but really thinking about what is it that we're ultimately trying to accomplish as a business. So what are the business outcomes we want? What are the drivers of those outcomes? And then how can we leverage this technology to serve those goals? Has been, I think, really important in keeping us from wasting our time doing a lot of stuff that feels fun and nice but doesn't actually drive value. And so I think if you go back and ask each time, you start a project, how does this connect to a business goal? How am I going to measure success? And then within the process itself, all the different steps that you're taking, much like with engineering, can you go back after each project and say, how could we have done that better? What could have been more efficient? How could have that been more powerful? And have that sort of reflection time built into the cycle of how you do your work. That process, I think, can be very powerful for driving results quickly and change quickly over time.
Interesting. It's funny because as you were talking and I was thinking about process from the agency side and the agency world where I've, plus the interviews that I've done, one of the side benefits of a process, let's say you're rebranding your organization and you and the marketing group could probably come up with that idea. And in fact, you may be able to see it even day one. But if you don't bring the organization along and the stakeholders along, and frankly, even in the sales process, that's what Brent Adamson talks a lot about is that buyer enablement is a process. Mm-hmm. You can't just sort of arrive here and say, buy me, right? It's a process and you need to support the process. And I have to tell you, there have been several times in my career, particularly as an agency owner, where in the first meeting, I have listened to the customer and their issue, and I wrote down some language. I had to put that away and sit on it for sometimes a month, sometimes 6 weeks until the process sort of got there. And it's funny because, and also it wasn't, this wasn't confirmation bias necessarily, but it was this notion that everybody else you have to bring people along on this process, on this journey. And I think that's one thing that leaders are really good at, is not just saying, there's the hill, go take it. I mean, I think that's important. That's vision, but also helping them understand why we're taking that hill and how that fits into our values and all those things. So anyway, I'm lost in my own, I'm overthinking all of this, but thank you for bringing that up. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're really going to dive into review sites, why they're so important to your business, and how you can use them, impact them, make sure they're not hurting your business, but more importantly, how they can help your business. So stay with us.
Hey, it's Drew. I was at a conference the other day and somebody looked at my saw lapel pen and said, "What's up with that?" And I said, well, what's the one thing that marketing has always had to do? Forget digital, forget all this stuff. What is the one marketing imperative? And he looked at me and went, "Cut through." And I went, yes, ding, 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 ding. That's right. Cut through. That is what marketing must do. And it's not just cutting through the clutter, although that's really important, because if your marketing doesn't cut through the clutter, it's like the proverbial tree in the forest that falls and nobody hears it. But it's also cutting through the crap and the processes that inhibit innovation. We've been working a lot lately with some CMOs to help them cut through the crap and get at the essence of what is their big idea and how can they make a case to expand that idea across their business. That, to me, is cutting through.
Okay, we're back, and my guest is Claire Alexander, who is the Group Vice President and General Manager at Capterra, one of the world's leading review sites. So let me ask you this: as we're back now, and we're going to talk about the review sites. Let's talk first about why are these review sites so important?
Sure. So review sites are so important because buyers are starting their buying journey online. And, historically you've had to rely on word of mouth, and word of mouth is really powerful. It still exists, and it's just been amplified because now it's not just word of mouth from people it's word of mouth from all of the people who have left reviews on review sites. And so tapping into that is really important, and making sure that your product is accurately represented there is really important, because that's going to be one of the first things that people look for when they are developing their consideration set and getting a feel for who they want to be working with in the future.
Okay, so a funny story on this. So I know this is not directly related, but Glassdoor is a review site for employees of companies, right? And it's funny, I was at a conference the other day, and I mentioned the name of our organization, Renegade, and the individual said, "Oh, we invest in an oil company called Renegade down in Texas." And I said, "I know, because on our review page, there is a review from a wildcatter who is saying that, it's a lot of work outdoors and it's a little hot down here." And when I went to Glassdoor and said, "By the way, we're in New York, this company is clearly in Texas, and that this guy, we don't do anything, we're not in the wildcat oil business, can you remove the review?" They actually said no. And it's like, I'm still flabbergasted by that, and I've tried twice. So that's a situation where there's this bad review, and it has nothing to do with our company. So anyway, I imagine that there are stories out there, that lots of people have stories out there of their businesses where it's very difficult to sort of get rid of that wrong review. How does that process work at Capterra? What if you saw a review that was just inaccurate? Maybe they weren't even just talking about your company.
Yeah, no, that I can empathize with that experience, and it's frustrating and painful, especially when you don't really understand why they won't take it down. So we actually have we have over 500,000 reviews on the site today, across 611 different software categories. It's quite a big operation for us. And I won't tell you that it's perfect yet, but we've put a lot of thought and we've put a lot of investment about, building it. And we're, very interested in making sure that it gets better and better over time, to our early point about process. So for us, I think first thing is, if it's a situation where the review is blatantly from a different industry, like the one you just described, then obviously the quality assurance team is going to take a look at that. And, if it's something that obvious, that would probably be taken down in our case. But otherwise, what we try and do is, first of all, validate that the person leaving the review is a real human being, because as you probably know, there's a huge game out there to scam Amazon and Facebook and kind of other large sites that people look to for reviews with bots. And you can just have machine-generated reviews stuck up there that look like it's somebody from a different country leaving their opinion, and it's totally wrong and gaming the system. And so we try and really scrub for those by having a real identity validated through all kinds of different means. And then we also scrub for reviews where if it is a human leaving it, that human has been flagged as somebody who is a spammer or kind of a black hat type person. We don't publish those reviews. So the reviews that get to our site, we've tried to do a very good job of scrubbing to make sure that they're real and valid and relate to the product. And there are always those times when the vendor says, well, this isn't my customer. And when that's the case, we look at the individual leaving the review and try and ascertain, could this person legitimately have used this software either through a friend's seat, for example, because I know that it's nothing that any of us want to hear, but when you sell seat-based licenses, often those that login information gets shared among many people. So even if that customer individual isn't on your customer logs, it's entirely possible that that they might be getting legitimate access or illegitimate access to your product, or that they've demoed the product. And even demos can provide a useful review. Like, people want to know, what did you say no to and why? And so assuming that all those kind of valid ways of having a review are covered, what you're left with are those reviews that you just don't, just disagree with the review site that belong to you. And there, I think it's really important to take advantage of the kind of vendor comment feature, if you will. So you'll notice, I'll just use TripAdvisor again as an example, because they've definitely been a big example for us. There's always that opportunity for the vendor to respond to the review. And I think that I certainly, just speaking with myself as an individual consumer, I really appreciate and watch how vendors respond to negative reviews, to positive reviews, to inaccurate reviews. The way they respond tells me a lot about how they think about their customer. And so even if, it's a situation, for example, again, at TripAdvisor, where somebody's had a lousy time and, the garbage men were loud outside and the concierge was mean and, the room smelled like smoke, the way in which that is dealt with by the vendor as shows up in their comments can sort of let me say, oh, this person is a crank, I'm going to discount what they say, or gosh, this hotel really sounds terrible and I'm definitely not going to go there. So I think that's one really important way that any brand can think about how to manage reviews.
So, I think if we were to make a quick list for folks in terms of just the whole world of reviews, one, you have to assume that they will be given on your business, on your software. Two, that would mean you'd want to provide as best customer experience as you can, obviously, and obviously have a product that works. Beyond that, are there, and when you get a bad review, it sounds like responding to it is as important as not. Beyond that, is there any sort of, some basic or sophisticated advice that you could give to the listeners that would help them approach digesting the reviews that they have and making the most of the ones that they're seeing out there?
Sure, and I have to admit, this is something where we don't even follow our best practice hygiene rules ourselves yet, but we will, which is to, first of all, decide which review sites matter to you. And I would suggest that you care about the ones that have, very high traffic volumes. For example, we get 5 million uniques on our site a month, and so that's probably a good place to start if you're a software vendor. And so first of all, just monitor those reviews, and think about it, a lot like a social media channel. You want to understand the dialogue that's going on in those channels, and you want to participate wherever you can in ways that are going to be constructive for your brand. And then you also perhaps want to invite people to the table. So really thinking about having a sort of concerted customer advocacy program that spans across channels, and one of those channels is the review site channel, I think is really important. So just like, you're trying to get your message out through display advertising or through social communities, you also want to think about the reviews channel as one of those mechanisms and make sure that you invite people to talk to you and talk about you on there. So some of the best practices I've seen are vendors who incorporate reviews collection in sort of the normal course of doing business, back to that process comment again. So for example, they invite you, in email signatures, there's a signal to buyers, the sales force will have leave a review about our software on, Capterra.com, or they will have events. And we actually have a program that's free to our vendors to help them, solicit reviews, which is we will pay a nominal amount, $5, a free cup of coffee, that type of thing, for a set number of participants, and they basically will at their events say, hey, will you leave a review? Capterra will give you a gift, we can give you a gift card for a free cup of coffee in the lobby in exchange for your honest thoughts about our product. Now, obviously, if you're doing an event that is sponsored by the organization, you're probably going to have a fairly positively biased audience to work from. And so, again, if you're in a situation where you feel like you're getting unfair coverage, and that all of the positive aspects of your product aren't being equally weighted, that's another way to make sure that your customer advocates are weighing in on your behalf, rather than just leaving it to sort of less happy customers to tell people what they think about your product. So again, we will always, as a reviews platform, we want to provide our users with the most comprehensive and sort of thorough, honest point of view about a product possible. And so, we will never take down reviews that are negative just because they're negative. We'll take them down if it's, blatantly wrong, or if we can't prove that that person exists in real life. But we're not going to take them down just because they're poor. And in fact, I'll tell you something crazy. Reviews that have a spread of positive and negative reviews versus products that have just positive reviews actually have higher conversion rates. People trust the reviews more when they see a mix of positive and negative reviews, because let's face it, we all know nothing's perfect. So if you can kind of admit to your flaws, quote unquote, or be comfortable with the fact that your product might not be right for everyone, but again, respond graciously and sort of be highlighting the things that do work, you're going to attract people to you that actually really want your product, and will have the right set of expectations going into that relationship.
Gosh, and that's funny. I remember, I'm sure I wrote an article on this several years ago, but, everything in marketing comes down to building trust. I mean, let's face it, if you don't have trust, you have nothing. You don't have a brand. And it's so interesting that in order to gain trust, you need to let, it's wrinkles and warts and all, right? And so, but I remember that fact from an interview I did years ago with, I think, a gentleman who was managing all the online, that was doing e-commerce for a major organization, and the key to success for that was that there would be some negative reviews in there. Otherwise, it's not believable. So that's a perfect place to stop this segment, where we've just been talking about the importance of recognizing that reviews are really important, and they live out there, and you need to engage them, like it or not. So now we're going to move in this last section. We're going to talk about, okay, so these sites exist. Well, they also exist as ways of lead capture and lead management, and there are ways to work with these organizations. So we'll talk about that when we come back.
You've been listening to another great interview on Renegade Thinkers Unite with Drew Neiser. But the value doesn't end there. As a listener, you can download a free ebook from Drew, Renegade Thinkers, interviews with 11 trailblazing CMOs any business can learn from. Top marketing thought leaders and proven executives from Time Warner, American Express, and Chico's, and others. Get your free copy at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook. For listeners only at renegadethinkersunite.com/ebook.
Okay, we are back, and my guest is Claire Alexander from Capterra, and we've been talking about reviews and the critical importance of reviews, and how they are the word of mouth of today. Now, I know that because we have some clients that actually use services like yours as lead generation vehicles. Let's switch gears now and talk about how businesses can work with an organization like yours to literally drive leads to their website and that they can use.
Absolutely. Well, this is a topic that I love, of course, because this is how we monetize. And I'm able to, have a job and help to grow the business, is because we do actually do a great job of providing high quality leads at scale to our partners who are looking for those leads. And reviews are a really critical component of that, because as I said before, part of the buying journey, before anybody even gets to you, they're going to be searching online to learn about the space and to learn about the product options that they have, and to kind of compare and contrast products before they decide to actually engage with a vendor. And because we've been around for a long time, the company was actually founded in 1999 and has such an incredible breadth of coverage across 611 and growing every month, different categories of software. Basically, if you're looking for software, Capterra.com is going to come up in your search, usually, pretty high up in the search results, in one of the top 3 positions. And And so because we've got that incredible organic strength, we obviously get the traffic from Google, and then that traffic is able to learn more about the product that they're looking for by interacting with us. And so when they actually click out from our site to our partner sites, by partner sites I really mean to our vendor kind of customer sites, they're highly qualified. They're very clearly showing intent, buying intent, and so it's basically providing those mid and lower funnel opportunities to vendors that has made our business what it is today.
Okay, so I'm looking for a software to manage timesheets, for example, and so I would Google small business timesheet software, and I haven't done that search recently, but I have seen Capterra come up and other review sites come up. So then I, as an individual shopping for that timesheet software, would read some reviews and see some of the ones that were top of the list, click on that. At that moment, is there an exchange of revenue that's happening? Did I, if let's just make up timesheet A company, timesheet company X, did they pay for the transaction, or that? Okay, so talk about how that actually works and how to do it right. If I'm a software company, I'm in a specific category. What is the best way to optimize that spend?
Yep. So think about it exactly like Google AdWords. Essentially, you can land, as a vendor, what you're trying to do is gain awareness. And we essentially have our default sort option currently defaulting to the search, sort of the results sorted by bid. So the vendors at the top of that list are paying more than vendors lower down on the list or on the next page. And so just like with Google AdWords, you kind of need to figure out why you're using the site, right? If you're using it for, driving, if it's a pure performance channel site, or if it's a pure performance channel play, then you're basically going to be wanting to optimize to a cost per customer acquisition, a number which you should hopefully know and have developed, because you can see kind of the flow through to sales close. And you should be bidding, sort of setting your bidding strategy to optimize for that cost per acquisition. And I guess tactically what that means is it is just, as we all know, we don't click on Google's 17th page, generally speaking, right? You click on maybe the first or second page of search results. And so to benefit from the traffic that we get, it's often good to show up on the first or second, page of our directory results. But I will say one of the things we're trying to do is actually encourage our visitors not to just go with the default option, although many of them do, to really get involved in filtering and sorting the options so that they are finding a fit that's right for them. And so again, presuming a buyer has come in, if they're lazy, and I don't mean to say that pejoratively, but a lot of people just kind of click on the first thing they see, they'll go to that vendor. If they're sort of a very intent-filled software buyer, they'll often be sorting and filtering the software options based on different need states, whether it's I need this kind of, I have this kind of budget, or I'm got this many seats I need to provide, or I'm looking for this particular type of feature. And then, the search results come back with those as the predominant drivers, and then they'll click in. And again, it's at that click point that we make money. So we're essentially just like Google AdSense, but in software in terms of how we monetize.
So if I'm buying essentially a cost per click, right, and I can bid against that to try to get myself to the top of the list, and just for argument's sake, it costs me $1 for that particular click. And if I can, and then it takes me, and if I can convert 1 out of 15, then my cost per acquisition on your lead is $15. And presumably I'm selling a product where I can make money at that CPA. Is that math approximately right? I mean, but that formula.
That
formula.
logic flow is right.
So, okay, so then we can say, all right, and this gets really tricky because so many of the software companies offer sort of a month-to-month kind of a software service type situation, because what we're really talking about, the business value is lifetime value, not just that one moment in time, right? So if the lifetime value of that customer is $100 and it costs me $15 to acquire them and $30 to service them, then I've got a pretty big I could, in theory, afford to spend $30.
That's right.
And outbid everybody.
That's right.
And so it really, cost per acquisition is a number, and I know that lots of people use it, but probably the more important number is lifetime value, if they can figure that out, from the Capterra generated leads. It's not just lifetime value of everybody, because your leads for some company may be really valuable, and for others, they may be try and fly.
No,
you just don't know, right?
You're absolutely right. And that's, the reason I didn't start with the customer lifetime value calculation is because it is, we work with literally 4,000 different vendors. And it's hard sometimes to know what your cost per acquisition is. Oftentimes there's sort of a divorce between marketing and product. And so marketing has a really hard time tracing the value that it's driving through the product. Going back to the very top of our conversation, I think that's one of the reasons why historically you have seen so few CMOs move into general management positions, is because they can't quantify their impact on the business. But again, these performance-driven channels are so important to any business getting done these days, that I think that will change, because exactly, the forcing function of, well, I need to right-size my investment in marketing. And to do that, I really need to understand, are the leads I'm sending you from this channel high-quality leads? Are they leading to, one closed opportunities, or are they leading to nothing? And that's something that actually, I would actually encourage every marketer to talk to their general manager, their CEO, to really press home the point of, if the CEO wants to really understand how to grow the business and to optimize it, not only do they need to be doing these marketing activities, but they really need to make sure that their product and engineering teams are supportive and ready to instrument the whole business in a way that lets them see the full picture of the leads that they're driving. And by them, I mean the marketers see the full value of the leads that they're driving.
So this is really an interesting world, because in some sense, this is just like, as you've described it already, just like Google. And if you've been in marketing a while, you know that at some point in time, you can't spend another dollar cost effectively on Google, because you can no longer afford. You could be number one in the bid and you're spending so much money and you're not converting at a higher enough rate to make it worthwhile.
Yep.
And there's a famous case history, and I can't remember whether it was it TripAdvisor, or no, it wasn't TripAdvisor. I'm sorry. It was Travelocity. I remember it now, where they were spending 70% of their dollars on search, and they couldn't spend another dollar cost effectively. So they switched it. They put 70% of their dollars in television, and suddenly their lead costs went down because awareness was higher and the click rate went up. So I'm wondering, does the same thing happen if I've heard of, like, for example, if we were looking for accounting software, I've heard of QuickBooks, I haven't heard of the other three. I would imagine that would input in and have an impact on your algorithm, right? Because you're trying to optimize on, right? Does that work the same way?
It wouldn't have an impact on our algorithm, but it would have an impact on the customer's likelihood to click on that product. So it's absolutely true. And actually, we as a business, Capterra is on this journey. We have been, purely on the web and very much focused on last click attribution. And, the journey we're on is to move from a last click to a multi-touch attribution kind of a framework that is much more reflective of the buyer's journey, right? And there are efficiencies that come when you have that high awareness with your downstream, performance channels. The issue, of course, is that building that awareness is hard work and it's expensive, and it's not as predictable or immediately controllable as those last click channels. And so, literally, we're all in budget season right now, right? It's August, September. This is literally what I'm doing this afternoon. Is making the case for how we raise brand awareness and sort of the long term investment to have more efficiency from our existing marketing channels. It is not easy or simple. If anybody's cracked the nut on this, please, I'd love to talk to you, because I think that it's something that we all struggle with. And the way I think about it is I want kind of 80% predictability, 20% risk. And so I want to make sure that the business is going to be steady and in good hands, but I want to make sure they also have that experimental wiggle room to take a flyer and, obviously instrument it in a way so that I can see, did this actually return anything, and is this going to be worth it if I put my next dollar into it? But having the ability to do that is predicated on actually knowing how much value I'm able to drive from a specific channel. And so again, like, we as marketers need to push on our colleagues in product to make sure that we can have full transparency into the lead conversion and retention process, because without that, we're hamstrung. We can only make our best guess.
So interesting. You just covered a zillion really important topics that we've wrestled to the ground on this show, and obviously every marketer has, and I think a lot to come depends on where you start in your career and what you know and understand. It's so interesting to me, because if you were a Procter & Gamble trained marketer, you would totally understand the awareness type building. Brent, that's just what you've done, right? You are not a direct marketer. You've always been dependent on other channels. And so you totally understand that. And for you, the risk is on the other side for that individual. And whereas as you, as an internet sort of data first marketer, the risk for you see the risk in terms of the awareness building things. I just think it's so interesting. Would encourage you to read Byron Sharp's book, How Brands Grow, because it takes the high road and says, it really talks about the power of why awareness equates to market leadership and so consistently in so many categories. But anyway, wow, what an interesting challenge. I think what makes the journey that you're on makes a lot of sense, and for not just because ultimately growth is going to be capped by DM and direct response and last click attribution, but also because of the inherent risk of living in that world alone and relying on Google. It's problematic. Wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody, the first thing they did, they started in Capterra instead of Google? As sort of the way you get started. The other thing that I think about is, at some point from your business, you have review sites that you could be using, right? I know their review sites are review sites, which is hilarious. And I just wondered how you manage in that world. But I am completely circular here, and I want to leave the listeners with sort of two do's and a don't when it comes to this world of review site marketing.
2 do's and a don't.
Yes.
So I would say, do care about it, and do take advantage of every opportunity to engage your customer base with reviews, because you're going to learn so much from both the positive and negative reviews that you can use to inform product development and also inform your marketing copy. So those are my 2 do's. And then my don't is, don't be afraid of those negative reviews, because again, in my mind, the truth sets you free, right? We're all on this learning journey. Nothing is ever perfect at the beginning. And so how you react to negative reviews matters. And I think the most successful kind of partners that I've seen really embrace reviews as a learning opportunity and engage dialogue. They understand they're not going to make everybody happy, but kind of their growth mindset really helps them. And I think, again, back to your process comment at the start, when you have an organization that is oriented towards getting better rather than ignoring sort of uncomfortable things, it leads to a stronger, powerful, more effective organization. And so I would say embrace reviews platforms for that alone, because that will help your company overall.
I love it. And since we've been talking about reviews, for all you listeners, hint, hint, this is a great time once we're done, go on to your favorite podcast channel and write up a review about this show, good or bad. We'll take them all and learn from them. Seriously, I've been getting a lot of comments lately, particularly from LinkedIn. I don't know why, that people have enjoyed certain episodes. That's really helpful. I'm always interested in topics that are on your guys' mind as you're exploring the challenges of marketing, and you're trying to continuously improve your ability to move your company forward. So I'm so grateful that you're listening. Claire, thank you so much for being on the show.
I'm so happy to have been here. Thank you, Drew.
And it's great to have you all listening. As always, until next week, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.